Welcome to Business Talk here on Business Tech, South Africa's #1 news website, and from #1 business news websites to #1 digital banks. And we know running a business in South Africa requires a certain indefatigable spirit to not only navigate the demands of managing your finances and your products and your services and your route to market. You've got to navigate things like load shedding, the rising fuel prices, and just generally the current economic landscape. So it's a challenge, to say the least, that really makes it hard for even the savviest business owner. But it is, after all, the small businesses, that the SMEs are going to fuel our economic growth and help unlock the country's promise. So it's very interesting to note that TymeBank, South Africa's fastest growing digital bank, is targeting the small business sector, and it's bolstering its business banking offering with a series of new initiatives, key of which is a proposed acquisition of Retail Capital, which is an award-winning fintech company that I certainly hold in the highest regard. And Carl Vestvig, the founder, is a regular on my platforms. So to talk about this exciting development, it's a great pleasure to welcome Coen Jonker, CEO of TymeBank. Coen, welcome.
Thank you, Michael.
Now, TymeBank has been a leader in South Africa's digital banking movement ever since the idea really first started gaining traction of doing away with brick and mortar. What is the state of the industry today, if you were to zoom out?
Michael, I would say that it's still very early days for digital banking in South Africa. Although I would say that the legacy banks in South Africa are probably world leaders in digital channels. The movement towards digital pure plays in South Africa is really in its starting. It's in its starting phase. You know, we've got ourselves, we've got Zero, we've got Discovery, we've got a few so-called neobanks who don't have their own licenses but are providing various banking services. But I would say that we probably at the start of a decade or 15 or 20 interesting years ahead. Not only where digital banks will start coming into their own, but where fintechs of all sorts will look to become digital banks or to merge with digital banks to form interesting new competitors in the banking environment.
Yeah, it was a big theme at our recent fintech conference, the fact that you've now got open banking, the APIs are being opened up, you've now got banking as a service. So it's going to really reshape the landscape in a way that is very exciting over the next 10 to 15 years. And we're probably right at the beginning of that hockey stick then, if you think about it. How has TymeBank evolved over the years? Because you were really one of the pioneers here to reach the place that it finds itself in today.
Michael, yes, we've been in business for 10 years now. The bulk of it, we were really playing this in the space of banking as a service. We were really a fintech. But for us, the big tipping point came 3 years ago when we got our own banking license and we launched TymeBank properly as a standalone commercial bank. And that has really just accelerated the trajectory of the business in South Africa. As you might know, we've now got around 5.1 million registered customers. We've got about 100,000 registered SMEs. We've got, as far as we can see, around the best net promoter score in the country. So we're becoming quite popular. And again, I think in banking terms, it's just the start. I think of banking years a bit like the opposite of dog years. They're sort of longer than normal business cycles. And so we really think that, TymeBank in its current form is still a baby, but it's potentially a giant, will grow up to be a giant.
And watching the Time story over the last 10 years, it's been very interesting to note that you've embraced collaboration and partnerships to help grow and entrench and develop the brand in particular. Because I do think in a digital sense, you do have an advantage in growing the brand online, but perhaps not having brick and mortar requires that approach. But now going into the business space, I think is very interesting because there is a lot of opportunity, I think, here to offer real value to SMEs. And I think while many saw digital banking primarily as a way to bank the unbanked, the kind of base of the pyramid, it's clear that there's this case here that's far more broader than this. And looking at how you approaching the banking sector or the business sector, I should say, from this lens, what is the state would you say, of the business banking sector within the digital banking industry in South Africa?
Again, Michael, starting blocks, I would say. I would say that a lot of what we call small and micro business is really almost entirely unserved by the legacy banking sector, and if not underserved, severely underserved, and particularly severely undercapitalized. And this is why we just love retail capital and what the team have built there over the last 10 years. And we see that kind of solution, which is a highly digital, highly scalable solution that taps into the available data sources and funds flows in business to essentially leapfrog the need for security, leapfrog the need for formal financial statements, and inject working capital into businesses. We think it's truly revolutionary. And combined with what we've built on the transaction banking and savings side, which is the lowest cost transaction bank account, I think those things combined, we think, makes for a powerful solution, and particularly for those small and micro businesses that I think even the most ambitious SME strategies in the past have not really focused on.
Yeah, we saw it even through the COVID pandemic when we had that loan guarantee scheme, and it went through the traditional channels. Those banks, with all due respect, really struggled to understand and to provide a risk framework to lend into that sector. And so we saw very, very poor rates of lending into the SME sector through that model. Now, if you look at retail capital, it lowers the barriers to funding for SMEs through various ways. But just take me through the model that you particularly were attracted to in doing this deal now with retail capital.
Michael, yes, I think it's worth actually spending a minute on the actual model and why that is so interesting. So what retail capital does, they really work through partners, so particularly people who distribute point of sale devices in the market, the likes of Yoko, eCorca, SureSwipe, and others. And they tap into the data flow that comes through the point of sale device. So when people tap their card inside the business, they actually track the data of how many sales is this business doing. And they also tap into the actual money flow that comes from that point of sale device. And that essentially serves as a proxy for the business. So knowing where the business is, in what industry they're at, what they're selling, retail capital can really sort of reverse engineer what the economics of that business looks like. And that enables retail capital's team to then do a merchant advance to that business, essentially buy a portion of their future earnings from that business. And then instead of the retailer or the merchant then having to repay a loan to a bank in monthly installments or weekly installments, retail capital just takes a portion of the turnover of that future cash flow that they've acquired. And they take that portion of the turnover from the retailer. And what makes that ingenious is that it means that the repayment cycle or pattern of retail capital as the funder completely perfectly mimics the cash flow cycle of the business. So if the business has more cash, they pay quicker. If they have less cash, they pay slower. And what you do is you more than half your collection risk, because you're in sync with the business. It actually works from both sides. And it's proven to work. These guys have been successful over 10 years through arguably a once-in-a-100-year shock with COVID in small businesses. And they've done extremely well through that cycle.
Yeah, if anything, I think COVID was the perfect due diligence that one could have done into the model to stress test it. If you look at the two businesses, they're also economically complementary. And we use this word in M&A and deal making, synergistic, but they really are, because retail capital's product offering to small businesses requires a flexible source of low-cost capital, which obviously TymeBank's deposit base can provide.
Spot on. And not only a flexible source of a capital, but a significantly a lower cost of capital than any wholesale funding or notes program will give you in a country like South Africa.
Now, that's the one part of what you're bringing to market, but that's not all of it. What else? What are the other plans that TymeBank has in terms of offering products and services within the business banking space moving forward?
Now, there are two more things that we launched today. The first is a point of sale device that is essentially a app download onto an Android phone. So instead of having to buy a piece of hardware to actually take card payments, debit and credit card payments from customers, if you're a TymeBank business banking customer now, you simply download an app onto your phone, and it turns your phone into a point of sale device where somebody can tap their card, can put in their PIN on your screen, and do a payment.
I think Yoko are starting to quake in their boots a little bit as well. And what else have you brought to market?
Yeah, there's an interesting thing. You talk Yoko and Coen and all these guys. We see ourselves not so much trying to replace people who have devices, but going down market to people who either can't afford devices, they're not big enough to be interesting for the point of sale suppliers. And so even your plumber and your electrician and your hairdresser and so on, who would not normally have that physical device, can now accept card payments instead of a complicated process of trying to get you to pay a bill, etc., etc.
I can see a car guard, for example, being able to have that on their phone and now being able to pay people when you don't have cash. And it deepens financial inclusion across the board. Before you move on to the next one, I know the one thing TymeBank has built into its DNA is seamless and very fast onboarding. Is this the same with this SoftPOS app? How exactly is that going to work?
Yes, I'm happy you asked the question. It's a very quick process to onboard. It's a few minutes. It only switches on overnight, but it's pretty fast from an industry perspective. So if you're on board today, you'll be live tomorrow. And then the other thing that is quite unique is normally for small businesses, banks or suppliers will only settle them the money that they earn through the point of sale device, maybe a week or 10 days after the transaction. We'll also settle our merchants overnight, which means the money that on the card transactions I've done today is in my account tomorrow.
Well, that's very important for that segment of the market. I think cash flow is critical. So every day really has a huge impact on their day-to-day operations. And then the other one, I believe, is called Time Tribe. But obviously, because it's TymeBank, it's Tribe with a Y. What is Time Tribe all about?
Michael, we have the deepest respect for entrepreneurs. These are the truly courageous people of our world. But we know as entrepreneurs ourselves that starting a new business can be quite a lonely exercise. And sometimes you just feel you're in the dark, you're out in the cold. And what we're trying to do with Time Tribe is to create a learning community. So a place where entrepreneurs can go, they can find content that teaches them everything from how do I start selling on WhatsApp or Facebook, to how do I set up a set of accounts, to how do I do stock taking, but also create a community where entrepreneurs can learn from each other. And so the idea is that it's not just for TymeBank customers. It really is for any entrepreneur who feels that they want to be part of a community, of a learning community, and give them a place to go, to have the conversations, to ask the tough questions, to feel safe, and to feel empowered. Our byline in TymeBank is "You've got this." So the idea is to create an experience where people can feel they've got this.
And I mean, just looking through the partners, again, there's that partnership approach. You've got organizations like Meta, I mean, one of the biggest tech giants in the world. You've got Wits Business School, you've got SME Easy, all contributing to this platform. And whenever I talk to entrepreneurs, it's the one thing they say, it can be one of the loneliest journeys. Even with your partner who sometimes doesn't quite understand the late nights, the the sweats around who's going to pay, when they're going to pay, when you're building something of value and scale. So I think that that's hugely valuable as an addition to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And, in all of this, I get the sense that you're building out to something even more platform-based. It almost, to me, sounds like TymeBank is becoming a bit more of a platform.
Michael, I'm always a little bit careful to use those words. People sort of tend to, I think, sometimes overuse the words sort of a platform play and a super app and so on, these all grand ideas. But having said that, we want to nudge in that direction. We think that giving consumers as well as entrepreneurs a sort of go-to place where they have a problem or they're thinking about money, before they sort of go onto the World Wide Web and sort of see what's out there, that they've got a place that they can come to first and see, isn't there a solution for me in this place? And so this idea of, let's call it a curated marketplace, where we give people access to solutions that we think are great for them, even if they're not solutions that we've designed ourselves, or even, frankly, solutions we make any money out of. The idea is that there's a safe place, a place where hopefully we've put together in a thoughtful way solutions beyond just the narrow definition of what a bank would typically supply.
Yeah, you're sounding like the Fed chair, Jay Powell now. I don't want to give too much guidance meeting to meeting, but it looks like you're building something fantastic. And I agree with you. A platform has become a bit of a buzzword, but everything that you're adding to the TymeBank offering is just deepening and entrenching that value proposition at the end of the day. If businesses are interested in getting in touch with TymeBank and some of these new offerings, do they just Google you? I know that's probably the thing about a digital bank. They can't go and kick the door down on a branch. How do they get in touch?
Yeah, the easiest is simply to search for us online. All these things I've mentioned, Time Tribe, TymeBank, they're all available online. They can download the apps. That's the easy starting point. But of course, we also have physical distribution. We have our kiosks inside Pick n Pay and Boxer stores, and we've just started also rolling out kiosks inside the TFG group, the Foschini group, where we will have 600 kiosks by the middle of October. So we'll have, give or take, 1,500 kiosks all over the country where people can go and open both personal accounts and business accounts. And we've got friendly ambassadors there that can also answer questions and help people along the journey if they don't want to go purely online. And we found, interestingly, and I'm sure Tariq Karan would have shared this with you, that 80% of our customers have still come to us through these kiosks inside retail stores. So many people still like that physical aspect of doing business.
And it's generally just that once off. And then when you realize you can do everything else online, it's much like your shopping now. I think increasingly people are realizing, well, if I can get it delivered to me, why go in store? But you have to have that presence, to your point. Well, thank you very much, Coen Jonker, CEO of TymeBank, South Africa's fastest growing digital bank, over 5 million customers, now offering all of that value to SMEs. Thank you so much for sharing this exciting story and announcement of your evolution here on Business Talk on Business Tech. Take care.